SHL offers web-based solutions, data analysis, performance management, talent measurement, knowledge assessments, personality questionnaires, job simulations, a lot of things. And with me is the CEO, Andy Bradshaw, to explain what SHL is doing. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of things that you've got going on in talent management, and so let's just start with that. To explain the company, give me an overview of the company, and then we'll dig a little deeper into it.
Okay, the company's around 45 years old. Okay. So we are in the assessment business, so we provide insight into people. And it's normally people who are in the workforce, and that insight could be used for hiring, so talent acquisition, or that insight could be used for talent management around succession planning, high potential programs, all of that type of stuff. We operate in 150 countries globally, and we assess around 50 million candidates a year in 40 different languages. So we've got a lot of insight on the workforce.
Yeah. Well, and I'm interested because data analysis has become such a big thing, and really when this company started, that wasn't a thing, right?
That wasn't a thing at all. No, actually when the company started, it was very much a consulting-led business. But now data is such a big part of what's happening, and I think we're really in a data revolution when it comes to the workforce and understanding how to operate the workforce in a more effective way, not just for the company, but also for the individuals.
So what kind of headlines are you seeing, or big trends are you seeing with the workforce?
I think there's some really big trends. I mean, it's such an exciting time around talent management. There's more conversations in boardrooms now than ever around people. And whether that is around inclusivity, whether that's around digitization of a business, skills for the future, culture, engagement, these are all big people topics. And the problem with talent management in most organizations is that actually the processes that were designed aren't fit for purpose in this new era of doing business. And therefore, a lot of organizations are struggling to harness the potential of their candidates for hiring and also their employees. So there's lots of big seismic trends that are happening in the industry, and some of this is fueled by the pandemic. One of them, for example, from a hiring perspective, is the rising power of the candidate. It used to be the day where you were privileged to be able to apply to a business and honored to be part of it. Now it's very much about the candidate. The candidate's looking at you. You're the sort of company that I want to work for.
Is it a good fit?
Yeah, it's a good fit. Do I like your culture?
Yeah.
How do you approach topics like inclusivity? So the tables are definitely turned, and organizations are now having to think about the candidate experience. How do they bring that candidate on a journey that shows them about their organization and talks to them about their values, such that the candidate really wants to join. So, from that perspective and hiring, that's a big shift from where we've come before, and that's accelerated, as I said, because of the pandemic. Yeah. On more of the talent management side, it's really about data. It is around, my workforce needs to be really agile. I need to pivot. I mean, one thing that we all learned through the pandemic was agility and the need to be able to respond quickly.
Oh, yeah.
But most organizations, their data on their people is scattered everywhere. It's quite manual to get hold of. It is quite biased because it's done by human beings. And therefore, it's very hard to understand the entirety of a workforce. So that's really being digitized into data. And we're seeing this proliferation of sort of people analytics type systems where we can chop and change and look at the data in lots of different ways to answer different questions and therefore get better outcomes.
I see. Well, you mentioned the pandemic. Speaking of seismic changes, and of course the work from home thing is still being debated. And how is this? Where do you see that? How do you see that kind of settling down someday?
I mean, I think this is another big change in terms of the employee value proposition. I mean, gone are the days where you were measured by presenteeism. I'm in my seat for 5 days a week and therefore I'm working. I think that's actually a good thing. I think the flexibility that's been demanded, and it was happening slowly anyway. I think the pandemic just sort of pushed it over the edge. And for us, there are certain people who relish that working from home hybrid, and some people who just doesn't work. And we've got lots of our customers who are asking, can you help me understand if my workforce is ready for hybrid working? Where might I have challenges? Which teams, which functions? And really looking to understand that people data and how they can maximize the new world.
Do you have any data on productivity? I mean, if somebody is missing out on promotions and things because they're not seen, I mean, what are you learning about that?
I think We do have a lot of data in terms of that, and we're trying to sort of mix that together with other data sources around productivity to really understand it. Because there are definitely certain characteristics of an individual that where working from home benefits from, so you can see them, really improve in their productivity. And there's other folks who really struggle with that. And again, we can actually measure those that are more likely to be successful and those that are less likely to be successful in that environment.
Interesting. What about technology? How has that? It feels like that has just, gone so far in the past few years. How has that changed the hiring process and just the work process?
I mean, we can't do what we do without technology. It enables us to scale. It enables us to create a great candidate experience, whether that's branding or the workflow that a candidate goes through. So for us, it's enabled us to create great experiences for candidates. But also we're seeing technology develop in other areas. Artificial intelligence is talked about a lot in our industry, and I think will be very powerful as we go forward, but we also need to be very careful about how we use it. One of the use cases that we do is around technology hiring. There's a global shortage of coders. And most coding assessments, because people want to understand if you can code well, are pretty linear. You go through a set of questions, you create some code, you press compile, and that says whether you've passed or failed. The problem is there's lots of good coders who may have made one simple mistake through that, who then get pushed out of the hiring process. So we've included artificial intelligence into that process to look at the flow of the code. And we keep in about 30 or 40% more candidates than traditional methods of looking at it, which of course is great from when there's a candidate shortage.
Absolutely.
You don't want to push all of those out.
Yeah.
So artificial intelligence can be used in that sort of way to make the overall experience better and get a better outcome. But I think increasingly we'll start to see it used across the organization to make some bigger decisions because the amount of data that's being generated, and you said the data points coming together is really important to try and understand the situation.
Now, do you work with all kinds of industries?
All kinds of industries.
Okay.
It's interesting how the market's evolved. 10 years ago, it used to be very much professional managerial type positions, so more around financial services, technology businesses, legal businesses. But now it's all industries, all sectors, entry-level positions, all the way through to the C-suite, trying to understand how we can improve efficiency through the process. So in the same way, business process automation, BPO businesses, lots of work that we do in call centers, trying to understand what good looks like for a call center individual, and then obviously significant amounts of hiring taking place there. Financial services has changed. It used to be very much, we want the best of the best. But that's still true, but it's now about cultural fit. It's around inclusivity. How do we make sure that we're not fishing from the same pool all the time and getting the same type of people? And then retailers. Retailers increasingly using us to identify people who are good at service, but also they're having to fish in different pools. It's non-traditional ways of hiring because, of course, they're challenged by the war for talent in a slightly different way from other markets. Yeah. So we're working with them with different methods to try and attract the right people.
Yeah, and the DEI stuff is really kind of playing into the workforce here, and I know globally too,
globally.
Right?
Yeah, globally. I mean, if you look at the stats, if a person does a straightforward interview, the chances of you getting it right are about 10 or 20%. If you start to layer on more insight and some assessments through the process, your chances are about 70 to 80% of getting it right. So we take out a lot of the bias of hiring because, of course, when you're meeting somebody, you're immediately making assumptions. Yeah. So a lot of organizations introduce us, such as manufacturing organizations, to try and get more female talent into their businesses. And we can really help to try and remove some of that bias in the process.
So we're toward the end of the year here. We've got a brand new year, 2023. What are the goals for SHL in next year?
Well, we're gathering more and more data. So we assess 50 million candidates a year. We've got roughly 45 billion data points on people in the workforce. And what we're trying to do is increase the depth and the breadth of the data that we have. And ultimately, we want to be the organization that people come to around data for the workforce and therefore insight. So we'll continue to do that through a different ways of looking at insight for the individuals, different types of assessments that we're introducing next year. And it's going to be a really exciting year. We've got a number of good product releases.
And I guess your mission really is to make sure it's to make the workforce efficient.
Yeah.
And then also just make sure everybody's happier. It's a right fit and it's
I think that's exactly it. It's two ways. We provide information for the organization, but we also provide information for the individual. Because we believe, if the individual's developing in their career as well and they've got the right insight, then they're going to be happier, they're going to stay longer, and that's good for the organization they work for.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Andy.
Thank you.
Today.